And it usually says recording in progress. It didn't say anything here. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get started. Let me kick the camera on here real quick. All right, there we go. Well, hello and welcome, everybody. It is Tuesday, February 28th, and it is 7 o'clock. So we're getting ready to kick off week number 4. And we are still continuing our ascent up the Python and network programmability hill here, or mountain, if you will. And so real quickly, just to go over the syllabus. So here we are, the 28th of February. And so these are the activities that we're going to be focused on this week. So I think it's 13 weeks, Dylan, is the total number of weeks. And if you look at the syllabus, it'll actually lay it out and show you that the last week is going to be right around December. So we've got on our schedule for this week, we've got Lab 357. You're going to create a Python test unit. We're going to talk about that tonight. We're going to look at unit test. I'm going to show you some PyTest scripts as well, because you'll be doing PyTest a little bit later on. And it's just basically there are 2 frameworks that you can use to do some unit testing or testing of your Python scripts and modules. We're going to talk about the project activity number 2, which is the agile team formation. And then you have module 3 exam, right? Again, that's already been activated. So you've got 10 attempts, 5 hours per attempt. So you should be good to go there. So real quickly, the agile team formation activity, this is going to be due this coming Monday, right? And so here are your rubric activities, right? You're going to pick a team name, and you're going to choose which option you would prefer on the first project that you'll be doing. So you could do option 2, you can do a new application for IPv4 and IPv6 addresses. Maybe it does subnetting, right? Maybe it's a subnetting calculator or something like that. Or you can take the 492 code and enhance that code. And if you watch the video that I do up for 492, I talk about some of the things that you might be able to do in order to enhance it. So then you and your team are going to explain here. And again, it's only going to be whoever the Scrum leader is. That's the only person that needs to turn in this form. So you guys will put in here why you picked the project that you picked, list of backlog items. So you'll come up with at least 4 backlog items. You'll select a Scrum leader. How did you select the Scrum leader, right? Was it, who drew the shortest straw possibly? Or did someone step up to be the Scrum leader? Did you define any other agile team roles, right? And so from your reading of last week, the first half of module 3, that is where you would find the information to help you answer these questions and to get everything filled out. So you're also going to outline team communications, right? Which communications tools did your team decide to use and for what purpose? So if you guys are already using WebEx Teams, which is a phenomenal tool, you could create your own little WebEx team space, invite your team members in there, and then you guys could exchange things 24/7 in an asynchronous manner, so that all you'd have to do is check into Teams and see what people are talking about, who's working on what. So that would be a great way to communicate, much better than email, right? Not to say that email is bad, but Teams is a great way to do that as well. And so that's it, right? So this is kind of the easy portion of the team activity. So you're just filling this out, talking about what you're going to select, what you're going to do, but you're not actually doing any coding yet. And this is always in the way up here, so I can't close it out. There we go. And so that is going to be the project activity for this week, right? Let me fly back down here again. And that'll be due on Monday. Now, again, just like last week, I want to throw this out there. You can see that not this week's activities and topics, but next week's activities and topics, it's pretty low maintenance here. You've got a discussion topic, and then you have the lab. And I say the lab because we're talking about lab 492. And it's lab 492 where you're going to integrate a REST API in a Python application. And 492 is all about the MapQuest API. And I broke that down. And if you've been following along with the video list that I've been sending out about the videos that have been completed, I'll actually send out a comprehensive list tomorrow morning of every single video for every single lab. And I've already completed the packet tracer activities for module 5, but I actually break 492 down and go part by part, explaining exactly what each part is doing, how it's doing it, and you end up with a full-blown functional application that leverages the MapQuest API, and it'll give you turn-by-turn directions for whatever the user enters in. And so, again, the majority of learners, and I should say the majority of the teams, go with 492 because a lot of the code is already there. And so if the code's already there, you just kind of have to figure out, well, how can we extend the code? Again, not to say that you can't do option number 2. That'll be up to you and your teams. But I would definitely, when you're meeting with your teams this week to finish project activity number 2, that you guys definitely start to talk about 492, if that's what you're going to pick, or the IPv4, IPv6 program, and how you want to approach that. Because not next week, but the following week is when that project activity number 3 is due, the social coding. And that's what you guys are picking in project number 2. So you guys will have 2 full weeks to kind of knock that out. And again, the videos are there. So if you're uncertain about anything in 492, you could check the videos and it'll literally walk you through everything you need to do to have a 100% fully functional program. A quick note for those of you that don't look at the videos, I need to point this out, that in the lab activity, they ask you to put the fuel used. And in fact, if I was to click on that, and let me be very specific here. So if we look at this lab activity here, 492, and we come down to what they want you to pull out here, and I think I hopefully didn't go by it already. Yeah, right here. So it's part 5. They talk about this fuel used. So for whatever reason, MapQuest has removed that value. So you can no longer get the fuel used. So you don't put that line of code in there, okay? And again, I don't know if it was skyrocketing fuel prices as to why they pulled that out of there, and it was, getting too tough for them to keep track of it, or whatever the case may be. But fuel used is no longer in there. So you don't need to worry about fuel used. And on the same token, you don't need to worry about fuel used in liters because you can't get fuel used. So there's no way to convert from gallons to liters, right? Okay. So any questions on anything that we've talked about to this point with respect to the syllabus, what we've got due? I will be done and updated with grading by the end of this coming weekend. So you guys will have updated grades for all of the activities we've done to this point. So any questions? Anybody have any questions? No questions. Okay. So if there's no questions and you guys are good to go, and hopefully, again, this makes sense that, again, our focus here is on, whoops, sorry, flipped by it too quick there. Your focus here is on right there. Or wait a second. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, this is what your focus is on right here for this week. This is going to be coming due. Lab 357, Python unit test, 373, the Agile activity, and the Module 3 chapter exam. All right, looks like we might have a question. No, not a question. Okay, so we're good to go there. Let's go ahead and get warmed up. I'm going to shorten the booklet to 5 minutes. So Dylan's already in there. If everybody else can join in real quick. And this is going to be kind of a primer activity for what we're going to be talking about tonight, and also some of the things we have talked about. And so we've got a new theme picked out. So if you can go ahead and log in to play.bookit.com, and that is the join code there, and go ahead and join Dylan, and we will run through this. and get everybody thinking about programmability. And let's see what we've got here. All right, so Anj, Dwayne, Christy, and Nathan. All right, Christy is in there. So just waiting on a few more. Is anybody having problems dropping in there? I think we're waiting on Anj, Dwayne, and Nathan. All right, there's Anj. All right, so Dwayne and Nathan, we're waiting on you guys. Let me know if you're having any issues. Okay, Nathan is on his phone, so he won't be able to join. All right, so Dwayne, once you join, we'll go ahead and get things kicked off and going here.
Yeah, I'm putting the number in, but it's not, it's coming up invalid.
Are you with us, Dwayne?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Oh, you know what? Hold on one second. You know what I just realized is I think my speakers, I'm sorry. Yeah, hold on. There we go, Dwayne, go ahead. My speaker had been, I selected the wrong speaker. In fact, let me change to the, can you guys hear me okay if I'm using this different mic? You guys able to hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, sorry about that. My speaker option here in Zoom was selected for one of my microphones, which explains why I wasn't hearing anything that anybody was saying. So, okay.
I typed in 604-786 and it says this is not a valid game ID.
Yeah, so 604-7862.
Oh, I didn't see that last part. It was covered
Yeah, no
up.
worries, no worries.
It says we ran into a problem checking that ID.
Maybe kick a new tab open, refresh or something like that, and give it another try. So yeah, 604-7862. And hopefully that's going to work for you. Yeah, we got a little snow there over the weekend, and I thought I'd share this with you. So my son lives in South Lake Tahoe, and they have gotten 54 inches of snow over the last 5 days. So it's been crazy out there with the snow. All right, so Dwayne is in there, so let's go ahead and get going. The new theme for the week is going to be, I think it's Gold Rush might be the name of the theme here. And let's see what we've got. All right. And I'm clicking on start, and it is not starting. Huh. Well, this is interesting. I'm clicking on start, and it's not starting. Well, that's really odd. Yeah, the mouse is working. Okay, well, we are going to be skipping the look at activity. Looks, I'm clicking on start here. Let me refresh. But I think what this is going to do is, I think it's going to ask me to log back in and generate a new game ID. All right, well, we will pass on the look at activity for this evening and then dive right into the material for this week. So if we take a look here at the course, right? So we're kind of focused here on, we talked about coding basics, and that led up to that lab with Python. That was what we had to do this past week. So now we're going to be talking about code reviews. We're going to be talking about unit testing and some integration testing. So unit testing is simply a way for us to do some testing of our code to provide it values to see if we're going to get back the values that we expect. Now, assert is a Python statement, right, that you can use And they show you some simple examples here. I'm also going to show you some simple examples as to how to use assert, because it's kind of odd, right? The examples that they show you, if I was to say x gets the value of 99. So what you could do is you could say assert x 99. Now, we're basically giving it a Boolean expression here. And the expression is just basically checking to see, I'm asserting, is this true, right? So if it's not true, then I'm going to get an assert error. It's going to raise, or an assert exception. So it would raise an error. Now, I know in the context of what is here, this might not make a lot of sense, but as we build, hopefully you'll start to see the value of assert. And assert is used with PyTest. So the lab is on unit test. Later in the course, there will be a lab on PyTest, right? So they show you how to use assert here. And so if I say assert x is equal to 99, we don't get anything back, right? Because that was true. So if it's true, the assert test passes. And it's always going to be a Boolean. And so I could check to see, is x not equal to 99? And there's the assertion error, right? Because I'm asserting that x is not equal to 99. So I'm basically saying, hey, x is not equal to 99, but that is not true. That's false. Because right here, we set x to be the value of 99. So the idea with assert is that it's used for testing your code. And so you could have a program or a function or some lines of code that you want to check to see if I was to pass in some values and then I wanted to assert something to say, yeah, I'm asserting that whatever the result of this is, it should be this, right? So let's take a look at some additional examples. So we just saw, and I made some notes here of some additional examples that we can use. All right, so we talked about a function. So what if I was to define a function called divide? And divide is going to take in, two variables or two arguments, a and b. Again, a and b, once we get inside the function, those are known as parameters, right? And that's what we'll refer to the arguments we get passed as a and b. So I could say assert b not equal to 0, right? Because we can't divide by 0. You get that 0 division error. Now, I'm going to show you something, because assert, like I used it up here, right? I gave it sort of one argument, which is the Boolean expression that I'm testing, that I'm checking on. I'm checking to see if that's true or false. So you can provide assert two arguments. Now, the only thing we've seen is the first argument. The next argument is a message that you want to have displayed, right? Or you could take other actions. For right now, we'll just look at this as this action, or I'm sorry, the statement that we want to have. We'll say cannot divide by 0. We can even throw this in here and do that. And so assert b not equal to 0. If this is true, then we're okay. We move on. If this is false, meaning b is not equal to 0, if that's false, it means that b is equal to 0, and therefore we would say cannot divide by 0. On the next line, we're just going to return. And so this is if b is not equal to 0, we're simply going to return whatever a divided by b would be. Now, this is another sort of semantics thing here. With a single forward slash, does anybody remember what kind of division we would be performing here in Python? Does anybody remember the difference between what that division might look like and what it would look like if we had two forward slashes? What do you think? Yeah, great, Christy. Excellent. Well done. Floating point division. So if I'm here and I don't want to do floating point, and let's say for now we want to do integer division, which is what we have here. It's going to give us an integer number instead of a decimal placed floating point number. Okay, so I'm going to hit, sorry. I'm going to go ahead and hit enter and then enter. So now if I say, does anybody remember the command? I need to see all of the attributes of this namespace and all of the functions. Anybody remember the command I would run here from the interactive interpreter to see what's currently defined in this namespace? What do you think? And you can dump it in the chat or come off mute, your call. And this is a good command to know because it'll allow you to see what you have defined in here in this namespace that we're working in. So print, well, it wouldn't be print. So print would just print out. It is a built-in Python function, but it wouldn't be print, but that was a good guess. No, it's not printf. So I'll give you guys a couple more seconds to think about it here before we move on. Anybody? All right, so it is dir, right? So think of it as like directory. So list out for me the things that are defined here. And you can see there is our function divide. And so now I'm going to go ahead and call that. Actually, I don't even print. I'm going to call divide, and I'm going to pass in the two arguments. So for A, we could pass in 100, and for B, I could pass in 10, right? So if I hit enter, you can see that the answer we get back when we send 100 in for A and 10 in for B, that the assert doesn't do anything because B is not 0. So what do we get returned back to us? We get 100 divided by 10. If I was to run it again, I'm just invoking, I'm calling the function here. So we'll say divide 99 by 11, right? Oh, sorry, 99 comma 11. And we get back 9. So again, it's just simple division. But here's what I'm checking for. If for whatever reason, and the premise behind this, right? If like, let's pretend we're software developers here. The premise behind this is I'm testing this code to make sure that if 0 gets passed in, that assertion comes back as true, that B is not equal to 0. Or I'm sorry, that B is not equal to 0, meaning that it is 0, right? And then we want to see, does it say cannot divide by 0? So we're testing this here. So if I said 9 divided by 0, I'm sorry, I keep putting the equation in there, 9 comma 0, those are the two arguments. We're going to pass those in to our function, and there we go. So we get this assertion error, cannot divide by 0. So this is how you could use assert to actually print out a message along with the assertion error. Because the idea is that text, if I had like a whole calculator and I'm sending stuff in, and I want to make sure that if I have assertion errors in there, like if I'm doing addition, multiplication, subtraction, division, square root, whatever the case may be, I want to have some text in there to give me an idea as to where this problem is, right? And what my program is doing when that happens, when I try to divide by 0. And so this is why we want to have that there. Okay, so that is another example. And let me show you an example using lists, right? So that was an example using math. We can do an example using a list. And so I'm going to say define, and we're just going to call this check underscore list underscore length. And we're going to pass in some list. And again, this is just a parameter name here for this function, some list and expected underscore length. right? So the two things are going to get passed in. It's going to just be some list, and that's the parameter name I'm using, and then expected length. So here's our assert. So I want to check and see, is instance, and this should be ringing a bell. We saw this in one of the Python labs, where is instance, the first argument for is instance is going to be the list, because what is it that we want to check, and what data type do we want to check to see if it is? And so what this is saying here is, my assertion is that when is instance runs on some list, and again, we're passing that in as an argument, comes in as a parameter named some list, that it checks out, that the type command basically says, yeah, okay, this is a list. And that's what we're checking for. Now, if that's not the case, right, we want to have a little message here to kind of help us troubleshoot things. And I could say, input is not a list. So we'll leave it like that. And that should be that. 3, 4. And then we're going to have another assert that's going to check on the length of the list. And so, yeah, expected underscore length, expected length, comma. And here, yeah, here we'll use an F string. I think that's going to make things a bit easier with list should be, and, or not should be, list should have a length of length of, and we can use straight up expected underscore length with the closing curly brace. Let me move that. Do you guys see the chat on the screen, or is it only me that can see the chat? Does anybody else see the meeting chat, or is it just me? Because I've got this box. Okay, so you can't see it. All right, well, let me get that out of the way then. Apologies there. I thought it might have been only obstructing my view. Okay, so there we go. So we're going to have it say that the list should have a length of whatever the expected length is, and then we're going to 2, 3, 4 return true, right? So we're returning true if it is a list, and so basically, if these two assertions that I'm going to make are true, then we return true. So if it's a list, if it checks out that what some list is turns out to be a list that I pass in, we're good. So that's check mark number 1. And then number 2 is, and is the length of some list the expected length? And that's the other argument that I pass in, expected underscore length. If those two things, these assertions are true, then we're going to return true. If they're not true, we're going to get messages that are going to help us here with the assertion error. And so to call this, we're going to say check underscore list underscore length. Now, this is where I can pass in, let's do it wrong. So I'll pass in an integer and say the length should be 3. So when I hit enter, you can see what happens right away. We get an assertion error. Input is not a list, because 99 is an integer. If I reran that and put double quotes around 99, that's a string, not a list. So let's go ahead and do this. And again, you're testing your program to see, okay, well, what happens if something gets passed in that isn't correct? And at the same token, what happens if something gets passed in that is correct? So we have a list here, right, which is 1, 2, 3, and the length of that list is going to be 3, because the length is the number of elements in the list. And so we'll say 3. And I pass that in, name error, expected length is not defined. Did you mean, oh, did I typo something here? Oh, and I did. So I've got this typo. So here, easy fix. So we'll pull this back up. We'll go check that list, is instance, and let's spell expected correctly. Expected length, and then return true. There we go. Okay. So now if I was to pull back the list and 3, right, you can see that those two assertions are true. And therefore, my function is going to return the Boolean value of true to me. And so this is one way that you can check. Now, doing what I'm doing here from the command line is great for little teeny things like this, but once we get into sort of larger programs, it becomes a little bit more challenging. So let's take a step over here to the Python virtual machine. And hold on one second here. I thought I had created, maybe it was in here I did that. Let me check, sorry, let me check something here real quick. CD bin, CD Metacat, where did I put that? It was under Python. Huh. Or hold on, I think I'm confusing myself here. I created a bunch of files. I did not do it there. I know I did it in the virtual machine. So let's take a look at this. And actually, you know what? Is it in the home directory? No. Well, all right. So give me a second here, because I can't remember where I put all of these examples. And I swear, is it under unit test? Maybe. Let's check here. So it's not unit test. It's under Python. So it's not under Python here. Yeah, no, Dylan, I know the find command. I can't remember the name of the files. And also when you do that, Dylan, you may want to redirect standard error to dev null. So do something like this, find from the root directory dash name, whatever the name of the file is. So I think it was tests something or other, but then redirect standard error. Because if you don't redirect standard error, you'll get a bunch of messages for any directories that you can't get into or don't have permissions for. Let's see here. So I'm wondering if that is going to show me. Yeah, because I created a bunch of files earlier this afternoon. Wait a second. Might have been it there. Control C, let's bail out. No, that's not it. Okay. Well, this is a little bit embarrassing here because I know that I created them. All right, so we're going to end up taking a look here then at, and yeah, it's not those. All right. Yeah, I cannot remember the name of those files. So here, we'll take a look at this one right here. And wait, was it tutorials? No, it wasn't tutorials. All right. Okay, all right. So we're going to take a look at tests.pytest or ptest_division, right? So as I had mentioned, right, we're going to be doing unit tests this week, and I am going to find out where those files are at here shortly. But this would be an example of how you would take what we just did from the Python Interactive Interpreter and how we can transition that into sort of a larger type of test. And so now we have everything in a Python module. And PyTest, which you will have a lab on, if we import that, and again, you'd have to do the pip3 install PyTest if you didn't have it already. And you can check that by simply in the virtual machine. I believe it's already on there, but if you said Python 3, and all you have to do is type in import PyTest, and if that works, you're good to go, right? And you know what? They're over here, aren't they? Yeah, they're here. So I did put them, there they are. Okay. So I was convinced I had put these on the virtual machine. So here they are, right? So we're going to take a look at some tests that use PyTest. And so we have that same division one here, right? So let's cat out test underscore, PyTest division. So here it is right here. And if you import PyTest, right, here again, we have this division. So here we're checking to see if y is equal to 0, right? Because we can't divide by 0. And if that happens, we have this set to raise a value error. So this is another approach that you can take to doing error checking in your programs. And if that is true, then it raises the value error, and that's it. You're done with that function right there. But if y is not equal to 0, meaning the denominator is legit, then we're going to return whatever x divided by y is. Now, you can see down here, we have this other function, right? Well, before, when I was doing it with the interactive interpreter, and I was doing my tests, I was typing everything in manually. So here we've got this module created, and it has a function. And in the function, I am running assert tests. So I'm checking to see right here, what happens when I pass into my function 10 divided by 2? What happens when I try to divide 12.5 by 0.5, right? So 10 divided by 2 should be 5. And these are my assertions, right? I'm saying these things should be true. 10 divided by 2 is 5. 12.5 divided by 1/2 is 25. And so here's what we do. We say with, and remember, you can say with open in order to read a file or to write to a file or append to a file. And here's another way you can use this with statement, is I can say with pytest.raises value error divide 10 by 0, right? To see what's going to happen. Now, what's really important are these last two lines down here. And we've seen these before. It's this if dunder name is equal, and equal, but it's saying if dunder name is main, meaning it's checking to see, am I running the file directly right here from the CLI, which is exactly what I'm going to do. And if that's true, then it's going to run the main method for PyTest, which is to look for a function that begins with the word test and then run everything that's in there. So let's see what happens if I say Python 3, and this is test underscore pytest division.py. And you can see here, it's kicking up all kinds of errors, right? We've got an attribute error, all kinds of stuff went wrong. And it looks like it didn't like the one of the plugins that it was looking for. But you can see that that is going to run a massive test for me, right? It's going to give me all kinds of information here. So let's take a look at another one. Another one of these tests, right? So let's look at test calc math. So if I was to cat out test underscore calc math.py, you can see that here we're dealing with a class, right? So here's another look for you guys, right? Because I like to give you guys a lot of examples. So here's another look as to how you could do this. So let's say you have a class, and that class is really a calculator, right? That does addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. And again, we're checking here, we're going to raise this value error, and if b is 0. And then down here, we've got define test underscore calculator, and it's going to instantiate or create a calculator object from the calculator class. And then we're going to assert is 2 plus 3, 5, is 5 minus 2, 3. And so these are all the things we're checking. And then we've got this with PyTest down here. So again, if I was to try to run this directly, right, if I said Python 3 and what was it? It was test underscore mycalc. There we go. There was a typo. So Python 3, and you can see that we don't get anything back, right? One of the reasons for that is because I've got these, I'm missing that main line down there, checking dunder name equal to main, right? So what if I was to simply say PyTest and use the name of the file? And it's calcmath.py. And you can see that it's going to go ahead and it's going to run, right? So did PyTest raise a value error, right, when we tried to divide 6 by 0? And the answer is yes, it did. So again, it ran, everything ran great. And so here's what we get when you get a clean sheet, right, when everything looks good. So now let's take a look at palindrome, right, to give you another look at something other than like math. So if I was to say more on test underscore palindrome, for those of you that don't know what a palindrome is, it's either a phrase or a word, or it could be a sequence of some characters that is identical when reading from left to right as it is from going from right to left. So race car is pretty cool, right? So race car going left to right is race car, but going from right to left, it's also race car. And the most famous one that I remember is a man, a plan, a canal, Panama. And that reading left to right is a man, a plan, a canal, Panama, and it's the same reading from right to left. And so that's what a palindrome is. So we're going to assert, right, using our little function here. And if you take a look at this, this is pretty cool. This is the syntax to see if it is a palindrome. And so we're checking hello. Well, that should be false because OLLEH is not hello, right? And then 1, 2, 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 2, 1. That would be true. So I'm going to pass this stuff in to my function that I've designed because I want to test my function to see, is this going to do what I think it's supposed to do? So you can actually type in, again, we don't have the main, the dunder name equal dunder main, because I can simply say PyTest, and we can go ahead and type in test underscore palindrome.py, and we can see that it works. Well, let's VI test, and this is just me editing it. We'll VI this file, and I'm going to come down here and we're going to assert false, or I'll just take the R off here of race car. So we'll save that. Let's clear the screen. And we run it again and take a look, right? So it comes back and PyTest says test failed, right? Test is palindrome. What are the failures? Assertion error. And take a look where it takes us right to where it's finding the error, right? And that is a mistake because we're asserting that that is a palindrome and that that's true, that that's a palindrome, but it's not, right? We pulled the R off of it. Now it doesn't read the same left to right as it does right to left. So we get the error. And if you're troubleshooting your code, you would look at this and say, oh yeah, you know what? Okay, that's right. That's not true. Oops, sorry. That's not true. So let me go back in here and fix this test underscore palindrome.py. We'll come down here and I'm like, okay, let's get the assertion correct here. And we'll put in race car. Let me double check now. That should come back as true. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. That should come back as true, and everything should work, right? So I've got a couple more examples that I want to show you of unit tests, but let's quick level set here. Is everybody comfortable with assert? The assert statement that you can use from the CLI, and how with PyTest, and if I was to cat that out again so we'd have something to look at here, and with PyTest, how we might not only run the test using Python 3 with the dunder name, dunder main, but this is actually kind of a little easier way to do it because we don't have that dunder name, dunder main, and we just simply say PyTest and the name of the Python file that we have PyTest in here, and it's going to go through and it's going to do its thing. So any questions on this, how we would test for different use cases for our programs? And it doesn't have to be functions, right? A lot of the examples I've given you are functions. It doesn't have to be a function, right? I mean, you can check any number of things, right? Again, we use the class and we were checking some things with the class. All right, so that's PyTest and that's the assert function. So now the next examples are going to be a little bit more complicated, and these are the unit tests, right? So we're coming fresh off of the palindrome. So let's take a look at test underscore utest palindrome. So what we just did using PyTest, this is what that would look like when you're using unit test, right? And again, PyTest and unit test, they're just two testing frameworks for Python. And there are others, but these are the two that are probably some of the most popular. And so here's what we have to do. And this is where unit test can be a little bit more confusing than PyTest, is with unit test, we have to subclass the unit test case class. And so, excuse me. So this makes it a little bit heavier lifting from Python perspective. And you can see here, I've imported unit test, meaning I've imported unit test and everything that comes with unit test. And one of the things that comes with unit test is this test case class. So what we do is I create my class with my class name. And again, test is palindrome. I could have named that test for palindrome, Trav's palindrome. Is this a palindrome, right? So I could have named the class anything I wanted to. But what's important is in the parentheses here, because I'm subclassing unit test.test case. And all that means when you subclass something in Python is think of it as that you're borrowing all of the features and functionality of whatever I'm subclassing. So unit test.test case. So I'm importing in, right, or borrowing from unit test.test case all of its features and functionality. And one of those features and functionality that you'll see here is we create a function. So it's similar, right, to PyTest, where PyTest, we did it inside of a function, and we're doing that here, except we have to subclass unit test.test case when we use unit test. So the function name, again, has to begin with test so that unit test knows, yeah, okay, here's the function that's the test function, and inside of that, I have all of these statements. Now, remember, with PyTest, I just said assert, and whatever the statement was that I was asserting was going to be true, right? Or whatever the case may be. Because we're using the subclass, right, I have to say self dot assert true. And what that means is this is my sort of class name here, and then assert true, that is a method that is in the test case class. And so that's what I'm borrowing, right? That's what I'm pulling into my program in order to be able to check to see, is palindrome race car, right? So you can see that unit test, it's going to do the same, it's going to do the same testing for us in this case as it did in the previous palindrome case. It's just that there's a little more code that goes into making this happen. So let's run this. Let's say Python 3, and this is test underscore utest palindrome. And I hit enter, and you can see the dot is that it ran one test, which means it tested everything I asked it to test in here. And there were no issues. Well, what if there are issues? Let's force some issues here. So let's go into test underscore utest underscore palindrome. And let's come down here and we'll change something else here. So you can see we're asserting, right? We assert that that's true. And so then I'm checking my function. Okay, when I pass a palindrome in, it should tell me that that's true. Here I'm asserting that this is false. But what if I was to change this to race car, right? And now let's rerun our test here. Aha! You can see that we come up with the F for failure, right? Test is palindrome. And it shows us where the failure is taking place. We're testing inside that file, test is palindrome, and we're asserting that this right here is false, that is not a palindrome. But it is. Race car is. And so that's our problem here. We get an assertion error. I'm making this assertion like the earth is flat. That's false, right? We know that that's false. So that would raise an assertion error with the majority of the population, I should probably say. And then you can see that it says true is not false, right? So this is true, that is a palindrome, meaning that it cannot be asserted that that is false. And so I ran my test, a failure. And so I look at that and I'm like, yeah, you know what? Okay, that's doing what I thought it would do. Let's clear the screen. Let me VI that file again. And let's come down here to the race car, and we'll just change this back to hello, right? And so that's an example of unit test. And if I fly back over here real quick and we count it, so that's an example of unit test, right? Again, there's the function we're checking, that we're testing, and here is how you have to class. And in the lab, you're going to end up doing this a couple of times, right? So be familiar with the class there. Let's take a look, excuse me, at one more example here. Or actually, I think I have two examples. Sort numbers, right? So take a look at something a little bit different. So test underscore utest sort nums. All right, well, here is the function I'm testing. Again, we import unit test, meaning we get everything that the unit test library has to offer. Most importantly, test case, because we need to assert whether something is equal to or not. So, and this is probably a good segue here. So I had said we asserted true, we asserted false. Here we're asserting equal. Well, let me grab this here. And maybe you're curious, well, what other things can I assert, right? What other things could I test? Well, if I pop out here to my browser, and I don't know if I went to this before, we'll just pick this page here, and we'll put in here, oops, sorry. We'll put in here Python documentation and unit test.test case. So here you go, unit testing framework, Python 3.11.2, which is the version of Python that we're running on the host system. And it's here that it will give you a list of the assert methods. So assert equal, is A the same thing as B? Assert not equal. So again, if you come take a look at the docs, it's going to give you all kinds of good information here about all of these things that I can assert, like assert in. Is A, whatever A is, right? It could be an element in a list. So like, is my name in list whatever, right? So we could be checking for that. And there's that assert is instance, which we saw when we were doing the PyTest, I believe. So if you take a look at the docs, you'll see that it gives you a lot of good information there. So here we are back at this unit test. And so what are we testing here? Well, if we come down, we define the class and we subclass unit test.test case so that we can get assert equal. So it's self.assert equal is what I'm trying to say there. So assert.equal, and we're going to sort numbers. And you can see that all this is doing is it's returning a list of sorted numbers. And that's how you would do that. You would say sorted, and you would put the list in here. It's going to sort that out for us. So when I send in 5271, if it sorts it, it should be 1257. Same thing here, 10.5, 2.15, 8. It should be from lowest to highest, 258, 1015. And the same is true of our floats, right? So let's run this and let's see what it comes back with. And I should probably be doing, where are we at? Oh, sorry, not that. There we go. And let me fly back over here real quick. Change word, and we'll say Python 3 and test utest. So it ran the test, and that's right? Because those were all correct. So what happens if I'm trying to go in there and take a look and see, and I swear I thought I'd VI'd that file. Oh, had not. All right. So we're going to go ahead and VI this file real quick, and I'm going to make it so that one of the tests is bogus. So we'll come down here and we'll pick the third test. So right here, it gives a list of these decimal sorted numbers, and I'm simply going to remove, or actually I'll change the order. We'll put the 1.61818. Yeah, there we go. So we'll put that at the end, clear the screen, rerun that test, and here we go, right? We get an assertion error. Lists differ. So the sorted list is not equal to the list I'm checking for, right? Not equal. Here's your assert equal. It tells you where the problem in your code is. And first different, and this actually goes into some pretty decent detail here, right? First differing element is element 0, what's index position 0, because we've got where are we at? I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong line. No, I'm not. So 1.68 or 1.618 should be first, but it's not. We have it last, right? And 271 is actually what's there. And so that's the problem. So we just tested this to see, would we get a failure? And we do, right? So again, one more look here. If I say cat test underscore u test underscore sorted, sort nums. So this is how you approach doing unit testing in Python. And again, there's other types of testing that you can do, and they go through in just the reading part of the module some of the different ways, but these are the ways that you're going to want to know inside and out for not just this lab, for the unit test lab, but also for the PyTest lab that comes along later in the course, which is going to be a little bit more complicated. So this is a really good start from a unit test perspective to see how it works, to remember that you're going to subclass unit test.test case. You're going to import unit tests. And again, they do some different importing statements in the lab. So in terms of testing, unit test or PyTest, any questions on anything we've covered so far? Anything not making sense? And again, as you work through this week and you see this material, it will hopefully make a lot more sense. And they give you a really nice unit test lab to work on. And again, the videos are there if you get stuck or you want additional information. All right, so if there are no questions, let's take a 10-minute bio and snack break here. And let me pause the recording. Make sure we get the... All right, so we are back from break, and let's now move on to our next topic. And so the next topic in the course, and this is going to be super, super critical, right? And that is data formats and understanding data formats. Now, there's a really good lab that you'll do where you're going to be parsing some different data types. And so just to make sure that everyone's clear, when you go to do the lab, you are going to be in, let me get out of here. And actually, I got to go back here, labs and DevNet source and parsing. All right. So in the parsing lab here, or labs, I should say, they do a really good job in the course of showing you some basic files that you can parse, right? Now, the XML file, and let me display that, myfile.xml, is basically showing you XML data. Now, I did an example in one of the videos. I did kind of like a supplemental video here and gave you like a smaller set of data with which to work, kind of like showing you like a really simple XML setup, as opposed to dropping you right in here into what looks like output from, I think it's the DNA Center is what it said. So parsing XML is, in the course anyway, is not something you do a lot. You're going to spend a lot more time on JSON data. So if I say more myfile.json, this is going to be more like the data that you will see. In fact, when we took a look at the MapQuest API, and they had the little example there as to like, you know, oh, this is a sample route going somewhere, we saw that that data is in JSON format. Now, we're also going to take a look, pretty cool, the International Space Station has there's a website you can go to, and they'll give you back information on the astronauts, then the different ships that they're on, or air or spacecraft, whatever they call it. So this is JSON data right here. Now, JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation, and it is not a programming language. And it's in terms of naming selections, this was probably the worst naming selection that they could have made. Is JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation. So everyone hears JavaScript and they're like, oh, so JSON's a programming language just like JavaScript. No. JSON, other than borrowing the syntax for what you would see when you were working with JavaScript, that's all they share in common, right? You got the curly braces, you've got the open bracket, close bracket, right? So, but the idea being is that JSON is a data format, like we would exchange data between two computer systems, and they would want to be able to understand what that data is. And so JSON is a format that can be used to do that. Now, the beauty of JSON is that if you're looking at this, you might be saying to yourself, wait a minute, that looks a lot like a Python dictionary. And you would be right. And this is one of the reasons that Python and JSON go together so well, right? I mean, it's just like hand in glove, because you can take a JSON object. And so this is a JSON object, and we know it's a JSON object because it's enclosed within the curly braces here. So in JSON, we would call this an object. In Python, you would call it a dictionary, right? Now, in JSON, when you see the open bracket, close, I'm sorry, I didn't want that, open bracket, close bracket like that, in JSON, that's referred to as an array. In Python, Python's going to take that JSON data and treat it like a list, because that's the exact same syntax that Python uses for a list. And here, in a JSON object, we have key value pairs. And look at that. The key is a string and the value is a string. And here the key is a string and then it's an integer, right? So JSON has object types that match up almost too perfectly with Python. And so if we were to take a step out to the MapQuest API real quickly here. I want developer.mapquest.com. There we go. So I'm going to developer.mapquest.com. We're going to look at the documentation. I'm going to come over here to the directions API, and I apologize if that's a little small. Let's try to make that a little bit larger there. There we go. And we'll look at the route, right? And you can see here, you can get the data in XML format. I despise that. I've always hated HTML, XML tags. I can't stand it. So JSON is absolutely perfect to work with Python. So take a look at what we have here. So this is a JSON object, and it's enclosed in the curly braces. And what does the object have? Well, here's a key, and then it has a value. And that value is also another JSON object, right? Now, remember, when Python gets this data and wants to parse it or kind of pull and pick little bits of information out of there, Python looks at this as a dictionary, right? And so this key here, the value is an empty list, is how Python is going to look at that. And you can see that as we scroll down a little further, and the reason I want to start highlighting this is because this is going to be what you will be doing. Oh, and also, I apologize. You can see here, right? The example that they shows fuel used. However, if you were to run a request right now, you would not see fuel used. It's not there. And we can actually, we should probably do that. And I think I've got a tab up in here that's got MapQuest, or do I? I do not. So we're going to go to MapQuest. So, oh, and I don't want to change off that tab. Hold on one second here. We'll do this here. All right. So we'll go to developer.cisco.com. Let's go to developer.mapquest.com. All right, so I'm going to go to the directions API, and we're going to do a get, and they want me to have the key there. So, oh, you know what? I should have thought of this before. I'm going to pull Postman up. Now, you haven't seen Postman yet, but you get a quick look at it here. And Postman allows you to create HTTP get, post, put, delete, patch, like all of this great stuff that you can do here. And it allows you to organize it. And again, you guys will be doing a really cool lab with this here. And I thought, there we go. And so here's a MapQuest get request. And so if I run this, if I click send, I'm going to run it. it's going to come back and you'll see we get a lot more information. You get the route, you get the session ID, and there is no fuel used in here, right? You can see that. It's got real-time, distance time, formatted time. So you're not going to see the fuel used. But what is important in this output is here is a key, right? A key value pair, and the key is legs, and the value is a list, right? And I'll talk it in Python terms here. It's a list. And so what's the first element of this list? Well, it's a dictionary, right? And then that dictionary has a key value pair, which is another list. And now we get into the maneuvers, the turn-by-turn directions. And this is all in JSON, right? Again, you can get it in different formats, but we are going to be interested in the JSON output. So that's kind of a quick flash forward on the JSON. Oops, I'll get back to the virtual machine. The JSON format there. And there's a lot going on in that MapQuest stuff. So if we take a look here, you can see that if Python were to look at this, it could access this, right? If I was, let's say it's just D for dictionary. And if I wanted, if I wanted to access the value under access token, or that access token refers to, I would get to it like that. Now, again, it's going to come back and tell me it's not found because I'm not in Python, but that's the format that would take. If I wanted refresh token, right, I would just simply come in here and change this to refresh underscore token. And in Python, that's how I could access the values out of those key value pairs in that dictionary. So let's do that right now. Let me say Python 3. So, and this is a great way to mess around with JSON data, is to jump into the interactive interpreter and let's create that dictionary. And I'm just going to grab that right there and hopefully could see in, oops, sorry. Hold on, it's lagging behind here. And I hope it's still in it is not in the buffer. All right, so we'll grab the buffer again and we'll say edit copy, and then we'll come down here. And so all I'm doing is I'm taking that JSON data, and if I was to clear my screen now, Control L on a Mac, if I was to clear my screen and say dir, we would see that we have this dictionary defined here with just the letter D. So if I say D, there's my dictionary with my key value pairs. So to access the information in there, I can say D access underscore token. Oops. And there's the value. What about refresh token? There's the value. What about, what's the other key value parent here? Oh boy, refresh token expires in. Refresh token expires underscore in. And there you go. And so with the dictionary in Python, right? So Python can take a JSON object like this or a JSON array, and we can parse through the data that it's providing us. So, and again, this is a great simple example for the fact that it's a single object with key value pairs, right? So this is very, sort of inductive approach here. We're taking a look at some simple examples, and now we're going to make it a little bit more challenging. So the International Space Station and ISS API JSON astronauts is how I find it. Yeah, here it is, API notify, right? So how many people are in space? If I make this a little bit larger so that you can see it, hopefully there, you can see that you can get the ISS location, right? And you can find the people in space. Well, it just so happens that if I click on api.open-notify.org/astros.json, if I click on this, it's going to give me a list of the astronauts by name and the spacecraft that they're on. So let's do this. Actually, let me do, I was not going to flip to the, all right. So let's just go ahead and grab this. I'm hoping that this is going to do what I need it to do here. And we're going to click on copy. We're going to come back over here and we'll call our dictionary, right? We'll call it Astros. And hopefully this is going to play nice. And I think it might have played nice there. So let's do Control L. All right, so all I did was copy the JSON object, which was the list of all of the astronauts there. And there was some other information here, right? So the message, it was a success, right? So me doing the query was successful. And then we have a key value pair here. So the first key value pair, the key is message, the value is success. So if I wanted to see whether I was successful or not, I could say Astros, and I would look for message. Again, I'm using the key to get the value. I'm treating it like a dictionary because that's what Python sees JSON data, or this JSON object as. So now let me see what I get when I look at the key people. And we can see right here, the value is a Python list, a JSON array. And inside of this, again, and this is kind of prepping you, getting you to think about like, so the maneuvers, all those turn-by-turn directions, those were kind of in a list, and they were these little individual dictionaries in the list, right? For each little turn, like index 0, index 1, index 2, all of the turns, like, go to the street, turn right, go travel that far, turn left, go here, merge onto I-80, whatever the case may be. So here, let's take a look at what happens when we say Astros and we change this to people. And that's the key, right? For the next key value pair in the dictionary. And when I hit enter, we get this list back right here. And so now when I look at this list is made up of elements, right? Because Python thinks it's a list. So the first element is that dictionary right there. The first element at index position 0 is that dictionary right there. The second element at index position 1 is that dictionary right there. And the dictionaries are all the same in terms of the format. The key is name for the first key value pair with the name of the astronaut. And then the second key value pair is just simply craft is the key. And then the value is the spacecraft that astronaut is currently on right now in outer space. And you can see there are different crafts, and I think there's only 2 crafts here that are, it's the ISS, International Space Station, and the Shenzhou 15, right? So if this is a Python list, right? If I say Astros people, and it gives me a list, somebody tell me, and actually somebody tell me, how would I get the first element out of that list? I want the first element out of that list. Let me pull the chat up real here quick. So you can drop it in the chat, right? Or you could pop off mute real quick, but what would I need to add here at the end to get the first element in that list? Because Astros people, that key returns the value, which is this whole list right here. And so now what do I need to add here? How do we index into a list? How does that happen? Yeah, Dylan, perfect. So it's 0, but remember, we want to put it inside the open bracket, close bracket, right? But that is going to return back the first element in the list. What if I wanted to always make sure I got the last astronaut that's listed here? How would I get the last astronaut, the dictionary that has the name key value pair for the astronaut and their spaceship? Right, Christy, excellent, -1, right? And so that's how I index into this list that just happens to have all of these elements, and all of the elements are the same thing. They're these little dictionaries with 2 key value pairs. The first key value pair is the astronaut name. Second key value pair is the spacecraft. So if I wanted to get the second astronaut listed, I could say 1. If I wanted to get the third astronaut listed, I would say 2, and so forth and so on, right? And again, this is going to be similar to what you'll be doing when you're getting those turn-by-turn directions. And again, the labs do a great job. They help you out. They provide you with the code. but it helps to understand what exactly that code is doing, especially when it comes to sort of extending the functionality of that code, right? So this is how we can get different astronauts out of this list. So let me ask you this, and I'll display it again here. We'll say Control L, and we'll just say people. So here's the list. So let me ask you this. If I wanted to get just Sergei Prokopyev's name, I think I'm saying that pretty close. So if I wanted Sergei's name, I just want his name. Give me the full syntax for getting just Sergei's name. So the only thing that should show up is his name. What do you think that would be? Take a look at that. And we want Sergei Prokopyev's name. And you can go ahead and drop it into the chat. All right, so Christy has names. So what about Astros? Don't we need the name of the dictionary we're parsing? Right, so if you take a look up here, we can see what Astros people is going to give us back. It's going to give us back a list. And we want to get that first element out of the list, but the first element is going to be the whole dictionary. So then I want to dig back into that dictionary and think of it as like kind of like Legos, right? Where we've got all these, or a puzzle, we've got all these little different pieces of the puzzle and want to put those pieces together. And we're just kind of building on top of that Astros people. What do we think? So you're right, Christy, with name. You've got that right, but is that where name would be? So who else has some guesses as to what that might look like? Anybody? Dwayne's not sure. Dylan is super close. All right, so remember, the dictionary is Astros. So if I was to come over here and I type in Astros, that's going to show me the entire Python dictionary. So we know that dictionaries are accessed by, or contain key value pairs, and we access the values by providing the key. So when I say Astros and the key people, P-E-O-P-L-E, right? I'm saying for this dictionary here, I want to see what the key people has as a value. So then we say Astros, and this is how you access the dictionary values, is by their keys. So when I say people, it gives me this, which is the list that contains, and it goes way right down over to there. It gives me the list that contains all these other dictionaries. Well, we just continue to build. So if I said people, I know I need to access, and Christy, you're super, super close. Before I get to name, right? Because if I put name in here like that, you can see it's going to come back and says the indices. So we're switching, right? Initially we're dealing with a dictionary. And so we provide the key to get the value. And the value we get is this list. So with dictionaries, and let me put in here the Astros people again, with lists, we don't use key value pairs with a list. We use indices, index positions. So I would say, and Christy, you were the closest so far, I would say 0, right? So again, we're just building, we're parsing down the data, we're trimming out all of the fat, getting away from what we really want. So now that is going to give me a dictionary. So how would I access Sergey's name out of that dictionary? So there's one thing we're missing here. And I want to see who types it in first there. And I think I actually typed in something over here. There we go. So Christy is the closest. Dylan was close as well. So, whoops, there we go. So again, that returns a dictionary to me. So now what do I need to add? I need to give Python a key here to get Sergey's name. And Dylan and Christy, you guys are both super close. I'm going to give it to you though. So you're right, it's name, but remember, we have to have that inside of the quotes because this is a string, right? The key is a string in this case, but that will give me Sergey Prokopyev's name. No, I'm not saying that right. So, okay, so that's going to give us Sergey's name, right? So excellent. Does everybody see that? Is anybody, and believe me, now is the time to let me know if that's not clear, because that is exactly what you're going to be doing to get the turn-by-turn directions. Is you're going to be coming up, you're going to have to figure out how would I dig down into all of that MapQuest JSON data to dig out the legs, which points to the maneuvers that's all part of the route. All right, so now here's a little challenge question. So I want you to print out the spacecraft that Zhang Lu is on. So what is the command that I would have to provide here to print out the name of the spacecraft that Zhang Lu is on? And let's see what you guys come up with here. And again, this is a fair test. Whoops, and I'm sorry, for some reason it's got this text is down there. I can't get rid of it. Well, let me backspace over. Okay, anyway. All right. So who can figure out how to print up just the name of the spacecraft here that Zhang Lu is on? So let you guys work on that for a couple seconds. Again, I know it takes some thinking, and I know that this is new. All right, so Dylan has Astros, people, -1, craft. So Dylan may have the right answer here. So we're going to say Astros, people, and why does he have -1 in there? Because -1 is going to guarantee that we get the last element from this list, right? So you can see right there, there's a little bracket indicating that's the end of the list. And where's the beginning of the list? I'm trying to find the beginning of the list here. Oh, sorry, way up there. And there's the beginning of the list. So we want the last element in this list. That -1 is always going to give us that. And let's see what we get right there. Okay, so if we've made it to here, right, and we know that we gave the name of the dictionary, we gave it the key that we wanted to get the value for, which was the people, that gives us a list as the value. We index into that list, which is just, again, it's these little teeny dictionaries in here, and each dictionary represents an astronaut and the spacecraft that they're on. And then I want to index into the I want to get the value for the key craft out of the dictionary key value pair here. And that will give us just the name of the spacecraft that Zhang Lu is on. All right, so here's a little harder one. I only want to print the name Koichi Wakata. What would be the command to print up the name Koichi Wakata? Or I should say, to parse the dictionary, the JSON object, in order to get the Koichi Wakata name. I just want to get his name. So give it a go and see what you come up with there. And hopefully these examples are resonating. And again, they are similar to, and I will do a MapQuest example for you, because I know that the MapQuest data it can be overwhelming, right? It can really be overwhelming. So Koichi Wakata. What do we think? All right, so Christy has people 6, and then name. All right, so Christy, yours produced Anna Kakina. Oh, wait, Christy says 5. Hold on. Christy is going to get a mulligan on this one. And there is Koichi Wakata. Again, remember, and hopefully, Christy, I'm correct when I'm assuming that you said, okay, 1, 2, and you counted and got to 6 instead of 0 for the first element in the list, 1 for the second element, 2 for the third element, 3, 4, and then 5 for Koichi Wakata. Yeah, it's one of those things you'll get. It takes a little while to get used to the whole starting from 0 and counting from 0. Okay. So that's Koichi Wakata. So final challenge here before we take a look at a MapQuest example. And again, hopefully these are making sense. If they're not, please ask, right? Please ask. So what do we want to do here? Astros. All right. And this is probably in the way at this point. So here we go. And this is, I don't know if I should show, well, because this is going to be, well, it kind of wraps around here, but let's take a look at the output here, right? So you can see right down here, it tells you the number of astronauts. Now that's, and I'm sorry, this is probably way too small for you guys to even see. And there we go. So down here at the bottom, there's a key value pair outside of the JSON array, the Python list. There's another key value pair down here, number, and it tells you how many astronauts are currently orbiting the Earth. So who can get the command to print up the number, simply the number 10? So I want you to print up the number 10. How would you do that? What would that look like? And so I'm going to pop back over here, because it is here. You can see it's kind of, it's at the very, it wraps around the screen there. In fact, I'll bet you if I was to do the following, there we go. So I zoomed out a little bit. So hopefully, and then let me do this, Control L, and then let's do Astros. There we go. Okay. So how do you get it to print up just the number 10? So Dylan says Astros and number. And let's see if he's correct. And he is. Because number, right, this is just a key value pair, just like message success is a key value pair in the dictionary. It's not inside of this list that's here. There's that list, right? The list is all of the dictionaries that represent the astronauts and their spacecraft. So this is just another key value pair in the dictionary Astros. So to access it, we simply give the dictionary name and the key, and we get the value, right? Easy peasy, super simple. Okay, let's take a look at MapQuest, because this is where it's going to get a little bit challenging when you guys start to look at the parsing of the J. And actually, let's take a look, before we do the MapQuest, let's take a look at the parse JSON.py here. So if I said cat myfile.json, and again, this is on the dev ASC virtual machine, we've just got this little list of tokens here. So let's take a look at the file, the Python script that is set up here to parse that. So two key things here, and actually it's not only is it set up to parse it, it's set up to dump the JSON out as YAML data as well, because YAML is another format that we're going to be working with not as much as JSON, but we'll work with it. And so here's all you're doing. You're opening up that myfile.json file that's in this directory, and you're going to do a JSON load. And what that means is load in that JSON data out of that file and create a Python dictionary object for me. And that Python dictionary is just simply called JSON data. That's it. So if we know what that data looks like, which is this right here, it's just a dictionary like that, you can see right here that I'm going to use the format method with strings. It's super, super simple to use. And we can just put this open brace, close brace as a placeholder when we go to print the values out. And here you can see I give the name of the dictionary and the key. That's it. It's super, super simple. And again, I give the name of the dictionary and then the other key to see when it expires. And then I give the name of the dictionary and the next key to see the refresh token that we're going to get. And then I give the name of the dictionary object I created by using this JSON.load and the key, and I get the values out. And that's it. It's that easy. And so if I was to run this and just simply say Python 3, parse JSON.py, there it is. So, and I actually have it print out, I had it printing out the dictionary so you can see like, oh, okay, well, what does the dictionary look like? Well, that's what it looks like. Then we parse it, right? So the access token is that, the expires in is that, and the lab I think only has you do 2, but I did all 4 just to kind of build, right? To show you that like, hey, we can go in and we can get these other values out of that dictionary. And then here is where we do the YAML dump. And hold on one second, parse JSON. Yeah, the YAML dump. Just want to make sure there. So we do a dump of that Python dictionary as YAML data. We dump it out, and this is what YAML data would look like. Now, you might be wondering, well, YAML data, this looks a lot easier to work with, and it is. This is even easier to work with than JSON, but with GET requests and with APIs, especially with like MapQuest, Google, the majority of the time, you're probably going to be working with JSON, right? You can work with XML, but you're probably going to be working with JSON just because JSON's easier. But YAML is an important language as well, especially if you start to get into orchestration type tools like Kubernetes. Again, you're going to hear that word a few more times throughout the class. I think they mentioned it like twice in the book, just in passing. But Kubernetes creates these files that are called manifests that use YAML is how those files are written. You write them in YAML, similar to what you see here, right? So YAML is also important as well. Okay, so let's take a look at MapQuest really quick. And I think we've got that down in here, I hope. There we go. Okay. So as part of the MapQuest lab, and again, I want to show you like a little bit more complex example. As part of the lab 492, and again, this is setting the table for your group activity, right? As part of that lab, you're going to be required to create 7 small little, I shouldn't say small, 7 Python scripts. It's the same script, it's just you keep adding things to it, and they have you save it off at like little checkpoints, right? Little milestones. And so if we were to take a look at the first file, and so here's the first file, right? Now, this is something you and your group may want to think about, is putting together some documentation that says, you know, hey, the author of this, and then put your the group names in here of all the members of your group. And then as the little sections, like whoever's going to work on whatever section, like whatever additional functionality is going to get added in that section, maybe you put some comments in there that say, you know, hey, this is the section that Christy worked on. This is the section that Dylan worked on. This is the section that Anj worked on, right? And then that would be where you would put your code. And so if you haven't signed up at developer.mapquest.com, you're more than welcome to use this key here. Of course, you're going to have to type that in. But highly recommend that you sign up for the free account at developer.mapquest.com. And I think I'm still in MapQuest here if I've got something. Okay. Yeah. And you sign up right here at developer.mapquest.com. And let me go back to the main page. And under your profile, you'll see where you can create keys, right? So I have a key called MapQuest, and then Travis test MapQuest. And I've got a bunch of keys. And you can create as many keys as you want. Now, the key thing is, if I go to edit keys, and this is what you're going to do, you're going to generate a new key. You do not have to put a callback URL in there. You can just simply put in here, for like your example, okay, this is lab 4.9.2. That's what I'm going to use this key for. You just click create, and you can see right down here, it's going to take a second or two. It creates a key for you. And then, oh, okay, cool. Well, I want to see my key. All right, well, there's the key. So you could copy this and you could use that key, right? Okay, and so you're going to need a MapQuest key, whether it's my key or a key that you generate, which is what it should be. That's what you're going to need. Now, you can see that we're asking, right? We're creating this JSON data variable here, telling the Python script that we want this data back. We're sending a GET request to the URL, and our URL is basically the main URL. These variables, you see what we have right here, right? We've got 4 variables, and they're just assigned strings as values. And then we leverage this special library called urllib.parse, and we use the method URL encode, which puts together the whole query string that we need. So let's look at what the JSON data looks like when we run this program. And you'll quickly see why looking at it in the web browser using the JSON View plugin, and I'll touch on that here in a second, is extremely, extremely important. So I'll say Python 3, we'll say star JSON _1 star. So here's what it looks like on your screen. And this is completely unmanageable to try to figure out what it is you would do here. However, if we keep scrolling back up, you'll notice that I've got this little statement here that says print the URL. And remember, the URL is what this returns. And that right there, you can see it underlined it. Let me move this out of the way here. This is your GET request. This is the URL that you could do a couple things with. I could grab this, I can copy it, I can go to Postman. Where did Postman go? Where's the running man? There it is. I can go to Postman, I can create a new GET request. I can click save, and again, you type on GET request, and we'll put in here MapQuest. Oops, sorry, MapQuest. So I can go to Postman, create this new GET request, and just paste in that URL right there. And then click send. And I tweaked off the beginning of HTTPS there. All right, so we'll do that instead. And here we go. So this is one way to look at it. You can look at it in Postman. So I could say, okay, well, I can see here kind of the top level is this route key. So I know that if I wanted to parse into something in here, that maybe the route key is going to be the key that I use. And then underneath route is legs. And underneath legs is maneuvers. And again, these are the values may differ. It might not always be a dictionary. Here it's a list. And so then we get into index 1, which is the first turn, followed by index 2, index 3. It's just each of the turns that you're going to make. They give you the time, right? How long you're going to be on that leg of the trip. They give you the longitude and the latitude. So all kinds of interesting information here. So that's what the Python script looks like. Sorry, I'll go back over here. So that's what the first Python script you work on is going to look like. Now, ultimately, what you're going to have happen, and then where's that 7? There we go. Okay, so if I was to say Python 3 and asterisk I can get away with that even. So here's ultimately what you're aiming for, is an interactive script where the user's being prompted to enter in the information. So again, because the first script you saw, the start, the origin, and the destination, those were hard coded in. That's not very usable, right? You're gonna have to go in there and change it every single time. Well, here we're gonna type the information in. So if I said I want to go from Crofton, Maryland, and I want to go to Coronado, California. And if you've never been to Coronado, I highly recommend it. I hit enter. You can see that at the very beginning up here, I had it type out, hold on there, get up here. I had it print out the URL, because again, I could take this URL and instead of going to Postman, what I could do is I could pull up the MapQuest Developer API and I can drop in that, oh, it's missing the H again there at the beginning. Let me do Control V, and I keep taking the H off the front end there. All right. And I can drop this in. Now, the way that this is working here, and the lab will tell you to install the JSON view extension. You can see it's right there, JSON view extension. This is the plugin that you want so that when you paste in the URL, you can look at the data like this. Again, this is a much easier way to look at this data and try to figure out, okay, if I want to get the time it's going to take, I would say route is the first key, right? And then you've got the value as a dictionary here. And so then I just need to use formatted time. And then that's going to give me the time. So it would be whatever the name of your dictionary object is, like JSON data, open bracket, close, open bracket, in the quotes, route, close bracket, and then another set of open brackets, open bracket, double quotes, formatted time. And then, close the quotes, close the brackets, and that's going to give you the time. And that's how over here at the top, where are we at up here? And that's how I get the trip duration. That's how I'm getting the total number of miles. That's the total number of kilometers. You'll notice the fuel used not in here because it's not there anymore. And I've got some other things in here that was doing some error checking to see, hey, is this a successful API call or not? Because I'm trying to get the status as the status 0. You can see I even printed out the copyright text, and the response that we get back is a 0. And so ultimately, this is your finished product here. And you can see it gives you turn-by-turn directions, and I never went back to figure out the closing parent there. And then we get down to the end, and what happened? Oh, I guess I hit Q, and then it quit out. So if you hit Q or you do the Control C, it's going to quit out and run, but it'll run forever until you tell it to quit. And so this is what you're aiming for as part of 492. And this is what, if you choose option 1 in your group, this is what you're going to extend the functionality of. Now, let me tell you, I had the class I had last semester. Again, I can kind of see, by looking at some of your work, like which of you have some experience and some skills in programming. But for some reason, it was like 3 or 4 people in this one group were hardcore into programming, and they created, and I probably should see if I can dig it up. They extended this MapQuest program here and literally had it. So it pulled up a GUI window with a map, and it would literally map out the route for you visually, and it would tell you where the e-car charging stations were, and it would even tell you the type of charging station connectors that it supported. So again, that was like way outside what's expected, but that's how, you could do things like that with the MapQuest API, and you can actually pull in information from other APIs. There's nothing limiting you to pulling in information from other APIs. But again, that's just an example that was, kind of extra in terms of how much they were doing. All right. So that is it for tonight. And man, we timed it perfectly. I'm doing pretty good on time tonight. So we're done with about 3 minutes to go. Are there any questions over what you've got this week on the syllabus, or what you guys will be working on, doing some unit testing? Create a Python unit test. You're going to get together in your teams, and you got your Module 3 exam. Any questions? All right. If there are no questions, let me kill the recording here.